All right. So welcome everybody, and thank you for that video clip. I guess I look a lot better on these video clips than in person. Um, Welcome to a session. Our session is actually called Financial Inclusion: Where We Are Now and What Lies Ahead. And if I was a guessing man, I would say lots of interesting things and lots of innovation lies ahead. I'm actually joined by an amazing panel, people who I've actually gotten to know at the backstage while we were waiting for this call. But before I actually go there, I wanted to thank the sponsors, the State Bank of Pakistan, the Pakistan FinTech Network, and Habib Bank Limited for both organizing the event and actually inviting me here to moderate this session. I'm joined by, well, I was supposed to be joined by six wonderful people. Two of them are yet to join, so I'll start with the introduction of the people who are here, and then hopefully the others can join if the technical issues are not there. So, firstly, Rehan Akhtar, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Karandaaz. Welcome, Rehan.
Thank you.
Secondly, RIZWAN Hussain, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Salaam Takaful. Welcome, Rizwan.
Thank you.
Omair Ansari, co-founder and CEO of Abhi. And Omair, congratulations on the recent raise. We have two other members who have not yet joined. Halima Iqbal, who's the co-founder and CEO of Udan. Hopefully, she will be able to join us over the duration of the call. And then finally, Noor Ahmed, who's a director with the State Bank of Pakistan, and we hope to see him soon too. So before we dive in, I thought it would be good for me to give a little bit of context on sort of financial inclusion and fintech, because there's a lot of conversation in every part of the world on the topic. And I'll start with a very simple sort of definition of the way I understand financial inclusion. Financial inclusion for me means that individuals and businesses have access to useful, affordable financial products and services, whether that's payments, savings, credits, insurance, which is delivered both in a responsible and sustainable way. I firmly believe it's not just a challenge for the developing world, but it's one which is as important for the developed world. Most countries, including Pakistan, have a national strategy. I think the one in Pakistan is referred to as FIP, right? And great strides have been made across the world on financial inclusion. Having said that, the work is not done. The latest statistics that are offered by the World Bank is that about 1.2 billion adults worldwide have gotten access to an account between 2011 and 2021, so in the last decade. And that accounts to about 69% of the adult population. With regards to Pakistan, the data I had of the State Bank of Pakistan website, which is dated 2015, I'm sure this number is now much higher, said that about 47% of the adult population in Pakistan have access to either formal or informal channel of financial inclusion. But as I said, I think I can confidently say that that number is much higher, especially due to the rapid digitization of financial services sector that we are seeing. I guess the emergence of fintech over the last few years, especially in Pakistan, has been very, very progressive and positive, and obviously, mobile and e-commerce penetration. So I guess with that, I'm going to say I'm going to speak less and let the panel speak. So let me just open up with a question which I'd like to pose to all three of you, in whichever order you want to respond on. How far along do you think is Pakistan on the financial inclusion journey? And what specifically has impressed you? It's always very easy to be critical about what's not worked, but I'd be very keen to understand from you, what is it that specifically impresses you about both what the government and the private sector have done on this topic of financial inclusion? I'm happy to start. Rizwan, why don't you go first, and then we'll
Yeah.
go to Rizwan and then
So, thank you, Arjun. Thank you very much for inviting. Uh, I'll just come right directly to what you just mentioned. Actually, the inclusion part from a consumer point of view, from someone outside the industry, I still feel that Pakistan has a lot, to cover on that front. Number one. uh, but the good things which has happened in the past last 10 years, I would say, the MFIs have grown. I think uh, from I think 3 or 4 institutions to I think 10 institutions, and they have increased the borrowers, and uh, the good thing of what the telcos have done, uh, that every person on board of the pyramid is likely to get the smartphone, which is very amazing to me, because yesterday I was sitting with a very big NGO. You must have known Ahuat in Lahore, and they were telling us that they have a borrower base of around 800,000 borrowers, and almost 60% of them use a smartphone. So the connectivity they have already, the telcos have provided. I think that this is something very unique, because I was not expecting this from I was thinking about 20% people would be using the smartphone. So I think the regulators, regulatory side, from the telco side, the PTA and the State Bank and the SCCP, I think they've done a pretty good job. Although Pakistan is not rated amongst the region, I mean, even in Sri Lanka or Nepal, from the financial inclusion point of view, that much. I mean, it is still below in the region. But I think overall, Pakistan regulators and the industry, the telcos, the MFIs, have done a pretty good job.
Rehan, your thoughts, please.
Yeah. So I think and somebody has picked it up already and quoting World Bank number. So Arjun, the numbers that you've shared are the supply side number.
Mhm.
I think what's hidden in the supply side number is that there are a lot of double counting, people having accounts in multiple bank accounts. So the demand side surveys, there was one as latest as 2020 that Gates Foundation basically sponsors. It's called Financial Inclusion Insight Survey. It's a demand side survey. So you go and you ask people, in a statistically recognizable sample, that do you have a bank account or not? And on top of the mind, how many people say we have access to the bank? Sorry, not even a bank account. So 21% is basically the number that is being quoted. So while there have been historically in the last decade a number of drives from the supply side to go and open accounts, but we also see that the dormancy is also kind of on the rise as well. So the active account, I would say, even from a supply side, would be half of the accounts that have been opened. So the good part is that the pipeline is there, the piping is there. Pakistan did not have the digital infrastructure on which financial inclusion could be driven. Because with brick and mortar, you really can't drive financial inclusion with a country of size of that we are. So we need new business models, and for that we need new piping, we need new infrastructure. Uh, I think, and now this is the criticism on Pakistan right now for the last few years, that now that we have the infrastructure, so we have, we'll talk about it a bit later, but we have Rast, we have Nadra, we have other institutions as well which provide the necessary infrastructure. How do we leverage and create whatever stack is required so that the challengers like Abhi and all these sort of fintechs which are coming and Uran, how do they actually leverage on it rather than build their own infrastructure to reach their customers? Because everybody knows that there's no business case to create a closed loop anymore. You have to collaborate. You have to sort of leverage on whatever is built. So credit goes to, I think, the regulator of taking lead in this. There's also criticism that should the development be regulator led or should it be market led? I think Pakistan, whatever is the scenario, we are where we are. It definitely requires some kind of foresight, some kind of vision, some kind of target setting by the regulator. And usually, what we've seen is industry following. So we've seen both State Bank of Pakistan and SCCP, who basically regulates the non-banking financial institutions, being very, very active in the last 2 3 years. I think one positive thing also is that during COVID, both regulators, created very pro situation sort of policies to facilitate the banking sector, to facilitate the customers. And we have seen that we have made use of the COVID. So I'm very happy that regulators were able to capitalize on that wave and whatever momentum we could sort of get there. I think the key question for Pakistan, we have been deliberating about this, is that when will the tipping point come where we will not need a regulator's push, and the market will come together and innovators will sort of come together and start fulfilling the demand of the consumers. Demand is out there. It's a huge country. And we have started to see that, people like Omair and, other sort of fintechs which are coming, and they're sort of, daring to take up the challenge. So I think we're on a positive trend. The question is when, not if.
Excellent. Rehan, so Umair, before you jump in, let me add a few more few more questions to it. So very keen to hear your views on what you have seen over the last few years, the positive stories. By the way, Rehan gave you a great segue. I think he mentioned both your company and you, so that was not organized in that manner. But we'd be very keen to hear the story of Abhi, right, and where you come from. And I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball on Rehan's point of when is that tipping point, right? Are we close or are we very far from that tipping point? And sorry to put you on the spot, but I thought it would be an interesting one to ask you since you're a challenger in the room. So over to you.
Sure. I'll first start off with, I think famous saying is 75% of statistics are made up on the spot. So when it comes to what you had mentioned before, where we are in terms of penetration and financial inclusion, we're only just the beginning. Everyone's getting worried, for example, about the amount of funding that's come into the space in Pakistan. When you actually look at it, it's only the tip of the iceberg when you look at other markets like Indonesia, for example. So I'll start off with the aspect of where has really surprised me. And we've only been here, look, I moved back to Pakistan in end of February, beginning of March of this year, but I've been tracking obviously for a little while. Having was in New York, looking at fintech globally when I was at Morgan Stanley. And I'd say that Pakistan has surprised me from the regulatory standpoint. Till this day, the regulator in places like Egypt, Indonesia, which are far ahead when it comes to funding, as well as ecosystem when it comes to fintech, are still not as open as Pakistan is. The idea of a sandbox, the idea that there's a crypto company that is already registered within the sandbox of the SECP is something that other markets aren't even looking at right now. So that idea that it's open for disruption and change and allows you to do so in a manner with regulatory umbrella is something that I haven't seen elsewhere, which I think is only the starting steps of what could happen further in Pakistan. To take a step back as well further in terms of who we are and what we do and who is Abhi. And by the way, we're Abhi, just Abhi, not Abhi Pay. I'm not sure how that got thrown in there. But what is Abhi, right? Abhi is a financial wellness platform. We don't mean that in a very angelic manner either. Why do we call ourselves financial wellness is because we truly believe in order to force digitalization in finance, which is really what fintech is you need to fix manual problems, both on an individual level as well as on a business level, that allow people to move to digitalization, right? The competition in the country is not other fintechs. The competition is cash. How do you move away from cash? And so that is our focus of the people who the people who fall in those statistics that you had mentioned earlier, for example, are the people who already are financially semi-included and have the literacy rate to be able to answer those questions that therefore fall underneath that statistical umbrella. I believe a vast majority of customers out there that we are targeting are those that are left out of that survey that then gets turned into a nice, beautiful report. And I think that's a vast majority of Pakistanis. And so what we're focused on is making sure that as a stepping stone into finance, we are fixing your manual pain point that then allows you to climb the financial ladder. And what is that pain point for us at the beginning is the idea of people living paycheck to paycheck in Pakistan. We know what inflation rates are. Let's focus on real problems, right? We know that inflation is high. I was reading the paper yesterday that someone committed suicide because they're the amount of inflation that's there in the country, right? Where the print today that came out was 11% of CPI. If you look at person who's earning between say 15,000 to 50,000 rupees a month in Pakistan, which is the majority of people, their grocery list is what is really driving their CPI, right? And that's increasing dramatically on a month by month basis. Now, the value of your rupee continues to decline as you wait to earn. So we make everyone a daily wage earner. That's our premise. We say, listen, you work today, you deserve to be paid today, and so that's how we fix that manual pain point to digitalize that process for you to get access to your capital that you deserve to have access to right now. And then as we move up the curve, we'll start offering other products to be able to bring you into more of an asset growth phase. But at the beginning, all you really need to understand is how to save money in a more appropriate way for you to be able to pay the bills that you need to have when you're living your life on a daily basis in Pakistan. So that's Abhi, I'd say, in a platform. Sorry, I'm forgetting another part of your question.
Tipping point. So when is the tipping point? Are we close to it? Are we very far from it?
Yeah. So it's funny. I was going to resign from Morgan Stanley 3 years ago to move to Pakistan to do this. At that time, I went and met with someone who'd launched a fintech company in Brazil. And when I met him, he said, "Great idea, love it, do it. However, don't be too early." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "I left Credit Suisse, moved to Sao Paulo, being like, I'm here, fintech, let's go." He said, "It took me 4 years before the tipping point got reached. And we were just sitting there waiting for that to happen." So I've been pleasantly surprised. I'd say the tipping point is here, very clear. The acceptance for digital is there. There is a little bit of handholding that's required, but the average consumer now understands the importance of digital, and not the importance of it obviously moved from the overall economic standpoint, but the idea of, hey, during COVID, and not to be cliche, but during COVID, if you need to pay your bills, if you can do it directly from your phone, what's better than that? If you need to order your groceries, for example, and you can't go out because there's limitation of how many people can go to the grocery store, etc., what's better than that if I can just click on my phone? So I think necessity has brought around adoption, and so that tipping point has already happened. Now, how fast that continues to snowball is a different question, but I believe the tipping point has been reached.
All right, that's interesting, and I would have hazarded a guess it's either around the corner or it's happened because, as you said, the demand exists, whether it's forced or latent. Digital infrastructure is obviously moving in the right direction. You've got a progressive regulator who wants to drive change, and then you have people who have inconstant themselves in the economy. RIZWAN, Rehan, who've been there for a while, and now I guess people like yourself were actually making proactive decisions to come back. So even if it's not yet happened, and I'm not going to get into a debate on whether it's happened or not, can't be too far away because at least the winds are enabling rather than headwinds. They're not going to be challenges. I think, and on the side, we should have a conversation separately around what I call a cashless society versus a less cash society, because I do still believe cash has a role to play for the foreseeable future. But we'll keep that for another discussion. Rizwan, let me come to you, right? Insurance, okay? Everyone starts to talk about financial inclusion. They typically focus on sort of getting a bank account, right? It's sort of the first thing. I'd love to hear your sort of story. Please so try and paint a picture on, how you became the largest Sharia compliant insurer or insurtech, right? And sort of what role are you playing in this sort of financial inclusion objective for the nation?
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you. It's a short story. I was with a very big insurance company in Pakistan for a good 28 years, and then when we bought this company, which was not doing well, so my brother always used to ask me, I mean, why you're doing this? You're good comfort zone and you're enjoying life. Why do you have to do that? Because and I always told him that we are providing insurance to those people. At times I feel those who really don't need the insurance. For example, the people who buy the car. I mean, maybe if very few people, if the car gets stolen, then they'll be in a financial trouble. No, normally they don't. Or the corporate sector, the people who needed the insurance most were not provided the insurance. I mean, the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So, and also the consumer, the SMEs, those are not the customers insurance companies are looking for. There was a complete red ocean on a business point of view. But yes, on a business point of view, we need to cater to that red ocean customers as well. So we have been doing this, for the last 2 3 years when we took over the company. But that was not the way forward. The way forward was that we go for the people who are not the customers of the insurance company. We need to create a blue ocean, a new market for the customers, a new market, I would say. So what happened then? Then we tried to inculcate technology in the insurance. So what happened? We moved very fast, because we introduced some things. I would just briefly tell you that we introduced a virtual OPD in our app. Any customer can have an audio call or video call with our doctor, and it's a totally free for our customers, and it is a wonderful experience for them. We introduced a pay per mile, pay as you drive mode of insurance, which was never existed in Pakistan before. It is happening around the world. And we were the first insurance company to be entered into a sandbox for crop index based insurance by SCCP. So we are doing a pilot in Sawabi and Raimiar Khan for that sandbox. So I wanted to create something, which has not been done before in Pakistan or in the insurance landscape. The challenges we faced in this backdrop, that the insurance companies have not been investing heavily on the human capital, because we don't have a product. Our product is our people. So we are trying to invest heavily in our people, because the human capital is all we have. Because financially sound companies, if they don't invest in the human capital, that would be a big challenge. Because last 30 40 years, insurance companies have not been penetrating in the consumer segment, because everybody's in the comfort zone and catering to the corporate side, and not going for the customer. Not even, I would say, that the middle and lower class customer, on the bottom side of the bottom of the pyramid customers. So we went to the communities, and there are communities for in Karachi, Thoraji community, and Okhai Memon Jamaat. And we went to them and we offered them that we'll provide you a service, a health card, which is, it's a wonderful product in a way that it is all cashless. I mean, we have given them a dashboard that the community people would know that where their patients are going. The charity patients get the card, and when they go to the hospital, they are treated as our customers. They are not treated as a charity patient, because previously they were being handled as charity patients, and they have to go through a process to get their case approved at the community office. So it is all paperless, it is all cashless, and it is a wonderful experience for those customers. Because, and we have not been going after for the money part as well, that we are charging a very low service fee for that, for those type of customers. But the promise remains the same, that we are inculcating technology to facilitate those customers who are on the bottom of the pyramid, or slightly above lower middle class income groups. Yesterday I just mentioned that I went to the Houth people, and they were like, uh, the borrower's maximum, I think, amount is they are taking 25,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees. And obviously, for insurance companies, there are so many little products which they can go and to offer to them. So I believe that our success has, I would not call it a success in a way, that what has happened over the years, last 3 years, although we transformed the company, it was doing 100 million Pak rupee business, and now we have, alhamdulillah, doing about more than 2 billion plus Pak rupees business. But I would say that business is not something which we are trying to get by hook or by crook. All we are trying to do, develop the people in our industry, in our company, and we are trying to reach out those people who need the insurance most, which they really, I mean, if they don't, they come in a position, there's a financial burden and they are broke. So I think that has made us, I think, successful in a short span of time.
Well, excellent. No, that's excellent, and I wish you the very best. And
Thank
and
you so
I
much.
thought I was the management consultant on the call, but you are talking about blue ocean and red ocean. Impresses me.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Rehan, I'm gonna switch gears. We talk financial inclusion. We usually jump straight to individuals. Can we please weave in the SMEs, the unfortunate SMEs, who are actually as excluded as some individuals are? So I'm assuming the situation in Pakistan is similar, right? I think, especially the MSBs are excluded. I'd love you to sort of color a picture and saying, color a picture, sort of telling us what are the reasons behind it. What do you think is going on today in Pakistan to address this issue? And then sort of bring it home from a perspective of what is Karandaaz specifically doing in this space, right? And what role are
Sure.
you playing?
Sure. So, SME finance situation is more dismal. I think individual access to finance is is much better. So, let me throw some stats. I think it has been quoted that about 170,000 SMEs in Pakistan have access to a bank. Uh, Total universe is more than 2 million, of course. Uh,
Wow.
I think less than 1% of commercial banks' loan portfolio, is towards SME. Banks have neither appetite, uh, they can lend to government and make very, very decent returns. Secondly, historically, whenever there was a push on SME, we used to have an SME bank dedicated for it. Everybody knows, the situation that the bank is. So there has been attempts which we have failed. The NPLs, I think, grew a lot. So the credit modeling of how to actually lend to SMEs, how to even assess the risk, the capability and capacity is not there in the country. On top of that, the SMEs themselves, we have a big informal market. Uh, we need to accept the truth. And a lot of SMEs or businesses do not want to get a loan from the bank because they fear that the tax slabs that they will fall into, and the documentation will lead to, getting into the tax regime, and they don't want to do that. I'll not judge them for the reasons why they don't want to be, although they should be. Um, but that's also on the demand side. Similarly, if you evaluate an SME loan process, it takes days and days and days. So even if you want to get a loan from a bank, on average, somebody quoted me, I don't know, more than 25 or 30 days. SMEs by design or by sort of nature are SMEs. They're small. So when they need money, they need money. And they will go to then the informal market. So a lot of SMEs actually go to informal market to sort of fund their lending requirements. So we have both supply side challenges as well as demand side issues, which is leading to this kind of a situation. Historically, there has been credit guarantees as well to encourage the banks, but we have seen the banks have not really utilized that. At Karandaaz, this is one of our prime mission that we want to solve the access to barrier issues, not only for individuals, but for SMEs as well. And for that, FCDO, which is formerly UK Aid, has actually given us a very substantial sort of funding to undertake this program. And what we do is, a multi-pronged approach. We create risk participation agreements with the banks, and nudge them to go and target value chains. So through the banks, we then go and provide financing to SMEs in value chains. We have, I think, partnerships with all of the major banks in Pakistan, and there's a successful program which is running. Secondly, very recently, we have also created our own funded company. It's called Pravas Financial Services, which is going to target SME. It is an NBFI. So the sort of the mission or the ethos of that company is to 100% target SME. So they will not have any luxury to go and target corporates and stuff like that. There has been some experiments on NBFI targeting SME, but not successful. I think the biggest one or successful one is Oryx Leasing, but it's a leasing based NBFI. But this was going to be a lending based. Finja is another company which is focusing on SME, using a lot of digital technology, and there are other companies as well which are sort of coming on this. So what we're doing is we're also working along with them to really demonstrate to the market and the investors that you could actually create an SME value proposition and be profitable as well. Karandaaz, because it's a not-for-profit, so we also do a lot of market development, and we have a knowledge function. So we create research, sectoral research as well. So, for example, we did a study on trucker fleet financing, and that if somebody wants to pick that up as a product, there's a research that is available. Similarly, we have research which is available on warehouse receipt. If somebody wants to create financial products on warehouse receipt, on agriculture side, that's also available. So we're doing kind of two pronged approach. One is we have actually created a company, but otherwise we are involved in a lot of market development activities as well. There's a long, I would say, there's a long way to go, I think, in SME compared to individual. It is a tougher nut to crack.
No, I agree with you. And let me sort of pose this question before I move to the next one, throw it out. What do you think can act as an accelerant, right? No doubt it seems like a long journey. It's not a challenge which is unique to Pakistan. I think a number of emerging economies do. Do you guys feel that there is an accelerant? There is never a silver bullet, but are there a few accelerants here which could make the situation a lot better, a lot quicker?
I would say the stakeholders have to come together. So, for example, the tax authorities have to be part of this journey. Because on one hand, you can't have pro financial inclusion agenda and then tax regime, which basically is counterintuitive. The tax authorities should address the concerns. Most of these MSMEs may not even fall into the minimum criteria of the tax bracket. But the fear is, if they get listed and they get formalized, then, there is no other way. So I think there has to be a lenient entry point into the tax bracket, maybe a permanent or a temporary, whatever the economic situation is, allowance for companies or MSMEs, especially the smaller size, to when they enter into the tax net, some tax, rebates or tax breaks, etc., for a few years or something like that. There's some experimentation done in Punjab province, but other than that, I think there is no holistic, cohesive strategy. Providing or creating products, lending products, I think will solve one of the problem, but you also have to prep the demand. I think this is one of the things that needs to be done.
Okay. Omair, Rizwan, do you want to pipe in or?
Yeah, I was just going to add on that. So, for example, at Abhi, we're a B2B2C company, and the premise of that was not to just serve the C, but serve the B as well. And I truly agree with Rehan when it comes to the SME segment is underserved. But I wouldn't wait for any of the authorities to be able to come up with a strategy to be able to go and attack this. I think the best way is for our private sector to lead and then public follows suit. So that's the approach that a fintech should be taking, in my opinion, and that's how it's happened in all other markets. So we're doing the same thing. We're servicing the B as well as the C through our offering, and the uptake on the B has been fantastic. Now, and that's where you are able to nullify a lot of the, let's say, the negative thoughts around what exactly SMEs stand for and the inability to pay and badly run companies. It's not the case. The idea is if you can outsource your balance sheet as much as possible, that's actually an efficient operating structure. So that's the premise that we go after when we're servicing the B side. So yeah, I agree with Rehan saying the policies have to come through, but I wouldn't wait for those to happen before actually going in and solving the problem.
And I'm sorry to labor on this point. And do you guys see telcos and other utilities, right, who have existing access to these SMEs? They are perennial long-term providers, obviously great access to data, and we know with all the capability now around how you could use different sets of data to determine someone's creditworthiness. Are you seeing them participate in this journey? Are they keen to be ecosystem orchestrators, enablers? Is there any evidence of that?
They're trying to. I believe there's the Jazz Cash offering, which is very similar to what Finja does, for example. I haven't seen the numbers, so I don't know how well it's done. I know there were problems with the product itself at some point, but I think the telcos are trying it and will likely continue to try it. But when you become, I think the issue with the telcos now, they've become a behemoth. They've become the size or if not larger than the banks. And as we know, the biggest problem with being a large institution is when you're trying to change from within, it becomes that much more difficult because of the various problems that happen inherently inside the business. So I think there will be, it's a big enough market for everyone to go after, but I don't think it'll be led by them. I think it'll be led down.
No, the reason I actually threw that in is because I think, in Africa, for example, a number of telcos, which were the behemoths, did take quite a progressive sort of stance on it. And some of them actually did successfully, execute strategies. In any case, I'll move on from this to sort of one of my favorite topics. We don't have the founder of Oran on the call, and this question was specifically for her. But I'm going to throw this question out, so I'm going to expect the three men on the call to answer this question around gender inequality. And this is a global issue, right? So gender inequality, specifically with women in the sort of the rural sector, is a big sort of challenge for financial inclusion, right? And obviously, I would expect this is an issue in Pakistan too, right? What is actually happening on the ground, right? So what is being done to address it? I'm assuming, Omair, you are gender agnostic in the way you operate, and I would imagine all of you are. But I'm going to open this question up. I'm very, very keen to hear that how do we close this gender inequality, specifically from a financial inclusion perspective, and sort of unlock this this latent market of giving women their sort of, I guess, their financial freedom, if I may use that term. Love to hear your thoughts. Anyone?
Yeah, if I may. So, we are not gender agnostic. We are very gender sensitive, transformative. Karandaaz has a women venture program which specifically hunts and targets women entrepreneurs and provides them access to finance. These are women businesses, women-led businesses that we provide sort of funding to. We also have a financial inclusion for women challenge round. Oran was one of our sort of sub-grantees as well, where we give them sizable grant up to like $100,000 to sort of mature their model or whatever sort of business they're in, related to financial services, of course. I think to sort of answer the question that you have posed, which is that how do we address it? We need to peel what are the issues and why are women left behind. By the way, the current sort of survey, the financial inclusion survey, which is a demand side survey, basically highlights that the gap is more than 25%. So with each inclusion that's happening, women are actually left behind. I mean, it is ironic, but the fact is that now the accounts are going to be opened on mobile. The SIM ownership of females in Pakistan is very, very low. Traditionally, also culturally, it's the men who have the SIMs in their name when it comes to ownership. And if you want to open a mobile account, the first sort of route is that if you have a mobile account, a mobile SIM in your name, you can also go ahead and open, very quickly in 2 steps a mobile account as well. So women do not have that platform. They have a barrier. So only 23% women have SIM. They said they have a SIM in their name compared to 70% men when they were interviewed. They said they have a SIM in their name. So it's a big, huge sort of issue. When it comes to financial literacy or basic numeracy, the gap is not that big. Another interesting statistic about Pakistan is that there are a lot of females when it comes to universities and schools. And in some areas, you will even find 50%. But when it comes to workforce, there's a huge drop. Girls, when they come to the age of marriage, I think it's a cultural norm that they do not, and most of them do not enter into a workforce. So that also gives them a very sort of, disadvantageous sort of starting point for that as well. And then thirdly, of course, the banks. We did a segmentation research for women. I personally went to almost all the banks and shared them with the segmentation study, and they said, "Okay, understood. There's a market out there, but is there a business case? Because men have the money, and men is earning sort of. So there is sort of deep rooted misnomer or sort of perceptions that people on the supply side have. And it was, even I will admit, I went through a gender sensitivity training, and I figured out I was blind, because there is no such thing as gender neutral. I would challenge anybody on that. Anything that you do in which you do not take care of how that development is going to impact gender, it's actually going to impact negatively unless you have deliberately put in something that it facilitates. So I think we are far, far behind. State Bank of Pakistan has also launched a strategy in which they are going to, for example, we never had publicly available statistics how many women actually have an account. There was no sex disaggregated data. If there was any data, it was basically privately or sort of held by state banks. So the policymakers or anybody who wants to develop something or do market development, it was just guesswork. So now that data is going to be captured, and they have also then asked, or they're going to mandate banks to create dedicated units or products for women, et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, there are banks who are, quite pro on women. So HBL, for example, has always been. I mean, they have had a dedicated women product as well. Udan is a great example. Shame Halima couldn't make it. She would have told a great story. So they are basically making waves. So I think the business case is there. We just need to have a belief that women also need to be included. My concern is that with each development, especially digital development, women already have a starting point which is disadvantageous, and it will leave them behind further.
Rizwan, do you want to pipe in?
Yeah, I'll just I think Rehan has said I think everything which I had in mind. I'll just quote my personal example. We have in this company, we have kind of decided that 30% of our staff would be women, and we have gone further. I mean, we have I think around 20 percent target for I think next year, and I think by 2023 we'll be 30% or 35%. We are making it as part of our strategy. But I have gone further. We have gone to the Islamic schools, which you call madrasa in Pakistan, and you asked them for the girls who have done the Islamic degree, which they call alima, and we have gone to them, and I'm proud to say that. Two of the girls have joined us. I mean, I think in corporate sector it has never happened before. Even in in Islamic banks, it has never happened before, because we feel that these kids and girls, they are superb, and very talented young people. And I'm amazed that they are working, and both, I mean, we have on board, taken on board the boys as well, alims as well. And I mean, they have surprised us. We are because they have been working hands in hands with, we have kids from LUMS and IBA, the top schools in Pakistan, and NUST, and Zabis and all those institutions. Uh, but they have amazed. They have surprises. They are going hands in hand there with them, and they are performing superbly. So all you wanted that they come into the mainstream, and they should just perform, because so many kids and the girls, they come out of that Islamic schools and the madrasa, and they simply have this, just as the Rehan mentioned, that the cultural and the I mean, the inborn kind of thing that's from the supply side, that they just don't kind of think about going to the corporate sector. So I think that we have taken the lead in our industry. I think even I would say Islamic finance industry, because even Islamic banks have not done this before. So from my example, I mean, I urge people that especially startups, that if they can go to the Islamic schools, we don't need to give them basic training on the behaviors, and all the morality and integrity. They are very nice people. So whomever I'm meeting, and I'm telling this with all my heart, that you should just try that.
No, that's good, Rizwan. So I think here's a challenge I'm going to throw to the Pakistan FinTech Summit for next year. You need a female moderator if you're going to have a topic on financial inclusion, and 50% of the crowd needs to be females. So let's see if the guys take on. I'm tight on time, so I'm very quickly, two questions. Abhi, Umair, what's next for Abhi, right? Give us a quick sort of picture of what's the priorities, where you're heading for the next year or two. And then I'll end with you, Rehan, where I'd love to hear a bit about Rast, right? It's something I've been reading on. So if you could end with those two questions. Omair, over to you first.
Perfect. Abhi, in the next 2 years or even 12 months, is going to be a platform business for not just SMEs, not just the consumer, but broad based as well. We plan to be in households in a way that people don't even understand yet, because we have this product lineup that's coming out next year, early next year, that is novel, not just for Pakistan, but even abroad. The idea is that Abhi should be a household name and understood the same way as something like a Kareem would be. So if you give us 2 years' time, Abhi, you'll be using as a verb continuously, and it'll be associated with us.
Well, that's excellent. And did Mudassar actually ask you to put the plug in for Kareem there? Right. Rehan, Rast, please, we'll end with that last question, and then.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people in Pakistan are aware of it. RAS is a real-time payment platform that State Bank of Pakistan has launched. It has been created with the gracious funding of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have helped State Bank sort of erect the system. The ambition is to have similar sort of infrastructure that India has in terms of UPI, which could provide the very, very necessary interoperability between banks and fintechs and EMIs and the challengers and the incumbents, etc., etc. So that again, nobody has to. So that the play is not to compete on the rails. The rails is provided. You go and create value proposition, and you compete with the customer on customer experience and how creative you are in fulfilling their needs, and so on and so forth. And RAS is going to provide that sort of, the complete interoperability. So far, the use case that has gone live is a G2P use case. Very, very soon, inshallah, in few weeks' time, the P2P use case, which actually brings in the much necessary innovation of alias-based payments and contextual payments. That is going to be launched, which we believe is going to be a game changer, and followed by that in a few months, a merchant use case. So I think everybody is looking very eagerly towards RAS. So it will then provide, the rails. So nobody has to worry about the rails. And then, that I think will be the tipping point.
Excellent, excellent. So, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all. It's been, I've learned a lot, and it's actually increased my desire to actually visit Pakistan in the near future, and hopefully get to see all three of you in person.